KGUN.com. That's me, Mr. Boss Ross. Coming up on this show, it's a jam-packed show. We had a very, very intriguing weekend. Of course, we have the NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs. The Diamondbacks, well, they're pretty much back and forth as they always are. And, of course, your phone calls at 520-298-1490. That's 520-298-1490. Your calls always welcome on this program.
On the All-Pro Plumbing Studio line.
Why, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. On the All-Pro Plumber Studio line. That's right. Coming up here, we have, we have lots to talk about here in this first hour. We have Jason Barr coming up at about 3:20. I'm sure we'll talk about some U of A softball. The Shelby Miller injury update from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Steve Kerr, and, of course, the NFL Draft, which, that special with Zach Clark, in which he will be back on Thursday with Ryan Finley, who's been graciously hosting this show up until today, and will be in here tomorrow and Wednesday. The sports editor of the Arizona Daily Star will be joined by the beat writer of U of A football, Michael Lev. The three of them will be here to talk everything and anything NFL Draft. That coming up here on Thursday. You will not want to miss that show. We start off today's show with, quite frankly, one of the most confusing sports stories I've heard in a long time, that dealing with the city of Oakland and how they're handling the now Las Vegas Raiders and the Oakland Athletics. That's right, everybody. For those of you that have been underneath a rock, the Raiders are moving to Las Vegas, and pretty much the town hates Mark Davis for it. So over the weekend or late last week, the city of Oakland has decided to double down and has decided they're going to give the Oakland A's a new stadium, which is awesome for the Oakland A's because that stadium is pretty much a dump. They had that sewage leak in 2016. I believe that was during a Mariners game in which, well, there was a delay because sewage was running into a dugout. Yeah, let that sink in for you. Sewage sinking in. Regardless, that stadium has been a football and baseball stadium now, a horrible one, for some time, and the city of Oakland has like $95 million they still owe on the renovations that were due that they did like years ago. And yet, the city is still blaming Mark Davis for leaving and not being gracious in paying off the debt when all he really wanted was a stadium for the Raiders. I mean, let's be honest. The A's and the Raiders both deserve their own stadium. That stadium just needs to be demolished. It's one of the worst stadiums. It's blocked off like half the seats in the outfield. Yeah, the fans show up when they're good, which, by the way, that's the sign of a bad fan base when the fans only show up when you're good. Of course, it's Oakland. It's Moneyball, since that's worked. The point is, everybody, that Oakland, the city of Oakland, they're a bunch of hypocrites, okay? For the same reason that they're mad that the Raiders are leaving, oh, let's just praise the A's and keep them here because we lost the Raiders, so now we should just give the A's a new stadium. I don't get it myself. Your phone calls, 298-1490 if you want to weigh in on this, 298-1490. They had an interview. Let's see what this guy's name is. Dave Cavall, the president of an investment group to find a new location for this new stadium for the A's. The community goodwill has created a, quote, momentum in projects like this is like solid gold. Yeah, it's from the San Jose Mercury, everybody. Solid gold to invest in a franchise that has done nothing, and yet you're mad that the Raiders didn't pay off the debt that the city voted for. That makes a lot of sense, right? I guess when you're at a state where they're in, like I said, the city owes $95 million still to pay off the debt for the renovations of that disaster known as the Oakland Alameda Coliseum. Sorry, the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, which has been known as like O.co. It's a disaster, everybody. I'm seeing a picture right here of a baseball game where the football lines are still evident. That's not a stadium, that's a joke. It just is. And plus, all right, so the argument that the Raiders are moving to a smaller market and this is going to hurt them financially, and Mark Davis is going for a money grab moving to Las Vegas. Oakland is I believe that whole area is like a top 10 market. Maybe it's mostly San Francisco, but that whole area, it's a top 10 market, whereas Vegas is not. I understand that. But last I checked, the deal that was made for this stadium, Al Davis was part of that, so Mark really has no obligation towards it. Mark owns the team. 31 of the owners said you can move. And I guess my whole conundrum of this whole thing is, yes, you can be mad at the Raiders for wanting to move, and you can be happy that the A's are getting a new stadium. But what I don't understand is how you can be so vehemently upset with how the Raiders are handling this. They went through the proper channels. They got owner approval. They got Vegas to front them the money for a stadium. So what's the problem? You still have the A's. The Warriors are still doing fine. I'm sure they're going to build them a new stadium too. Would they go 67-15 this year after going 73-9 last year? Of course they're making money. And of course, if the A's were run better, they'd probably make more money too. Of course, they'd have to spend money to make more money. You know, economics, everybody. I guess I'm happy for the Raiders. You know why? Because Las Vegas, it just feels like a sports town. And I'm not saying Oakland doesn't. What I'm saying is that Vegas is, okay, the Raiders are going to make money. Whether you're now a Raiders fan, were a Raiders fan, will always be a Raiders fan, they're still going to make money. They're still one of the most iconic franchises in NFL history. They're going to make money. What I don't understand, as I go into this article even more, is where they have all these interests in building the A's a new stadium. I think one of the guys that's helping to make their new stadium and find a location for it helped build. Let's see, what is this? The Avaya Stadium for the San Jose Earthquakes. It's an MLS team. Okay, so now you're putting in charge an MLS owner, or somebody that helped build the MLS stadium, to help build a stadium for the A's, but you wouldn't do that for the Raiders? Like, I guess the only way people would be happy about this whole situation is if Mark Davis said, you know what, I'll pay off the $95 million and then we'll build a stadium in which I should pay even more money. And I get it. NFL owners are not broke. I understand this. I am not taking Mark Davis's side necessarily, but I'm also not taking the city of Oakland's side. They handled this badly. They basically got scorned by Mark Davis and the Oakland Raiders, who are now leaving, and now they're just doubling down to say, hey, we want to keep the A's, because for a while there, it looked like if the Raiders were going to go, the A's were going to go, because that stadium was such a crux of those two surviving and thriving, even though it was a dump, that there were even talks of the A's moving to Vegas. And guess what? Vegas has already proven that they can handle a minor league baseball team. You think they can handle a major league baseball team? Of course they can. Oh, well, there's going to be gambling problems. There's gambling problems everywhere in this country, everybody. Just because it's centralized in Vegas and maybe a little less in Atlantic City and some other areas, it's still a sports town. It just feels like it. What's the other tournament besides the Pac-12 tournament that Vegas hosts, Stacy, for college basketball?
I believe they hold a few. The Mountain West, I believe, is held there.
Okay.
I believe the West Coast Conference is held there as well.
Okay. And I know they also, or at least at one point, they had like an arena team there. They can handle a big sports franchise like this. I love how people are like, oh, well, the Raiders are going to lose so much money going to Vegas. Why? Why would they lose so much money going to Vegas?
Vegas is massive. I don't know if you've been there lately. It is a big town. Not even a town. I mean, it's a massive city. There's more there than just the casinos. There's more there than just the Strip.
Absolutely.
I think whenever you're looking at Oakland, you have to put it in with the San Francisco, the San Jose.
Yeah, that whole area.
Everything around it, the entire Bay Area. Mm-hmm. That in itself is massive. But the city of Oakland isn't any bigger than Vegas is.
Right.
So, yeah, you get the TV market that you do with the surrounding areas in the Bay. Mm-hmm. You don't get that with Vegas. I get that. That doesn't necessarily mean it won't work in Vegas.
No, and okay, so here's my grand point to all of this, and that is the city of Oakland is wrong and Mark Davis is wrong. The city of Oakland is right and Mark Davis is right. I know that's a very cop-out answer of me.
contradictory there.
Hey, it is. But look, okay, here's the thing. Is it Mark Davis's job to pay off $95 million in debt to keep the team there? No. It's not his duty or his job to pay off a city's debt that decided to make a bad investment.
It goes back to the fact where, Zach and I have had numerous talks about this. Cities should not be fronting the bill for these stadiums.
I agree.
These billionaires and multimillionaires.
I don't want them paying the whole thing, but paying for some of it, I'm okay with.
Yeah, if you want to say maybe a quarter of it, I'm okay.
Probably
with
at max, yeah.
That.
Okay. But again, when you make an investment to renovate a stadium and then you're still in debt years later, how is that one guy's problem to help fix your city? It's not. But could Mark Davis and the city of Oakland prevented this 2 years ago? Yeah. Any good relationship, problems can start from the littlest of things and they blow up.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like you were saying, obviously on both sides, they're right and they're wrong. They both have good, valid points for staying and for leaving. It just seems like it's a relationship that's over the years has been tarnished and just gotten worse and worse, and no middle ground was being stepped on. Everybody was just getting further and further away from that middle ground, and it just got to the point where it was a breaking point. They just couldn't take it anymore.
This franchise started in Oakland, moved to Los Angeles, then moved back to Oakland, and they're in debt. So they moved to make more money. And guess what? The A's are getting a new stadium. I'm happy for them. I remember like 10 years ago, they were threatening to move to Fremont, which would have been a disaster. So for the A's, I'm very happy for them. Don't get me wrong. They've probably needed a new stadium for a while. But the city, Mark Davis, owner of the now Las Vegas Raiders, or whatever they're going to be called, they should keep the moniker Raiders on, honestly.
Here's the problem I have going back years and years ago is because these franchises were not willing to buy their own stadiums and purchase and build their own stadiums, they relied on the city to do it. Well, the city, to save money, put them both together and made it a football/baseball stadium.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have just fronted up the money yourself, you wouldn't have this problem.
Mismanagement of money. That sounds like Oakland, and yet they pride themselves on managing money through Moneyball. How about that? How about that? City of Oakland, Raiders fans, I don't feel bad for you because you're part of the reason this happened. That's the way it is. And guess what? If you want to be a LA Chargers fan now, good luck. I mean, clearly they need fans now. You have the Giants. We'll talk about Madison Bumgarner in a second. You have the Warriors. You have the Sharks, who lost to my Oilers this weekend. We'll talk NHL playoffs, too. But coming up next after the break, we have KGUN 9 Sports Director Jason Barr coming up to join us. We'll talk some NFL draft. We'll talk some U of A softball. U of A baseball had a rough weekend. Shelby Miller injury update. And, of course, later on in this show, we'll have your phone calls at 298-1490. We'll be back right after this. It's the Zach Clark Show on ESPN Tucson, 1490, 1049 FM. Boss Ross filling in for you, everybody. KGUN 9 Sports Director Jason Barr is in the studio with us. It's good to see you, sir. How are you?
You too, Boss Ross.
Thank you, sir. We've got lots to talk about on this segment of the program. I know that the NFL Draft is coming up this Thursday. Again, friendly reminder, Ryan Finley, Michael Lev, and Zach Clark will be hosting that show from 3 until 6. There are many prominent U of A football players that are currently in the NFL, a lot of high-profile players, Rob Gronkowski amongst them. But this year, maybe not so much. Is there a particular reason for that, or are there not a lot of high-profile guys coming out this year? Was there just not a lot of talent coming out from the U of A football roster in this draft?
Well, Ross, when you finish 3-9, it's not going to be a lot of players who are going to be drafted in the first round.
Sure.
And in this case, for Arizona, possibly not at all. You know, you've got a hopeful in Trey Griffey, who might be a stretch as a late-round pick, but it might be more like an undrafted free agent. And the same with Paul McGlure. You might have a situation where you don't have any Wildcats drafted, you know. I mean, it's even last year when they had a couple of guys in Scooby Wright and Will Parks, they went later than what they thought they were going to go, you know. So I think it was, 6th and 7th round for the two of them. You have a situation this year, I think we might have a situation where the football team doesn't have a draft pick.
Now, does this go back to at all, because I know there are a lot of players that come here having aspirations of going to a program that might be able to propel them to the NFL level. Does this fall more on the players, Rich Rod, the fact that it was a bad season? Is there anything more to this that meets the eye to a program that has had, again, high-profile talent going in the early rounds of the NFL?
You know, probably a little bit of everything. You know, when they got that Lowell Stevens football facility 5 years ago, and that was supposed to help in recruiting, and that was supposed to be the difference. Okay, they had a terrible locker room that they couldn't even show recruits. They didn't have facilities that were on par. That was supposed to help them win in recruiting. You know, had provided for a great facility. But if you look at some of the players who are coming in, they're not bad players, but they're not getting a consistent number of 4- and 5-star recruits, or, you know, these great players aren't going to Arizona. And you wonder if that Lowell Stevens football facility, that maybe all it made them do was keep pace with some of the other programs that are also, you know, putting these incredible football facilities out there.
We're talking to KGUN 9 Sports Director Jason Barr here on the Zach Clark Show. Speaking of the U of A football program, there was talks over the weekend. We had the Fan Appreciation Day over the weekend. There were still talks of a possible indoor practice facility. There was a little bit of news about it over the weekend. Rich Rod said it's not a want, it's a need. In order to keep the recruits coming in order to have that facility when it is 90+ degrees outside to practice in. Arizona State had a very nice one when it didn't deflate, and then of course they still use that. So what are the ramifications of Rich Rod basically saying that this is a need? Is this going to have to come from funding from within? What are the possibilities for their indoor practice facility?
Well, the money's going to have to come from somewhere, and you know the Lowell Stevens football facility was a $72 million donation.
It's a lot of money,
pretty much, mm-hmm. You know, and fundraising too. And with this situation, there's already an extra increase now for students that have to pay this athletic fee, this $100 fee, which a lot of people feel that, you know, is unfair, and they have a point, you know, to some degree. So to make students pay for this, you know, I don't think is fair, and I don't think it's right. I think it's going to have to come from, you know, an outside donor or an outside gift that is earmarked just to this, and that's where it's going to have to come from. And you know, I think it's more of a need or a want for recruiting than it is, you know, for practice. I mean, they practice in the morning sometimes. You know, they practice in the evenings. Everybody gets a little bit of rain. I think it's more a situation of trying to keep pace with recruiting than it is they can't function their football program without an indoor facility.
Two more quick hits on the U of A side. The U of A baseball team dropped a couple games to Utah this weekend. Should we be worried?
Well, it's a bump in the road. You know, it was a 3-game sweep, and you know, it doesn't look good when your head coach is throwing a temper tantrum in the dugout, which is what Jay Johnson did late in the second game. You know, throwing stuff in the dugout. That's not, you know, that's not a great sign. So you hope that this is just kind of a bump in the road, and you look back and say, hey, you know, remember when we had that bad stretch at home against Utah, then we went out and won 8 out of 11 games or something after that. But you know, I can't say that I saw most of the games. I was watching the softball this past weekend and some other things, but they only dropped to 13th in the RPI, or in the ranking, I should say. So they didn't drop that far. They've got a chance to make it up here still late in the year.
Speaking of U of A softball, we had a player cross a exceptional milestone this weekend, breaking the home run record. Mauga.
Yeah, Ross, one thing about Katiana Mauga has been her consistency. I mean, she's hit 20-plus home runs, I think, every single year. And as Mike Andrea said last week, she's been a step ahead of the pitchers. You like to think that after a few years, the pitchers can kind of figure her out or whatever. She's just kind of been there and keeps kind of going on strong. So with, I think, 6 games left in the regular season, she is, 7 away from tying the NCAA record. She's definitely not going to do that in the regular season, and I'd still give it a very outside chance. Postseason games count, but they'd have to go deep into the Women's World Series, which they could, but she would have to hit a ton of home runs. So I'm not sure she's going to get, I think her name is Lauren Chamberlain, who is the NCAA record for home runs. I'm not sure she's going to get there, but hey, she's going to leave Arizona as the NCAA, as the Wildcats, I should say, all-time leader in home runs. So, hey, this Ross, this softball team is really good. I mean, have you been out? Have you had a chance to see any games?
I actually got to watch their game on Sunday when they dropped Oregon. Again, they do show some real flashes of being a very formidable team this year. They can go very deep this year. I can see it. Yeah. Again, we're talking to KGUN Sports Director Jason Barr. 2 other things I want to get to. Okay. Steve Kerr's back injury that was allegedly like an illness at first, and now he's having complications from it. Now he's missed a few games. He might miss the rest of the playoffs. Do you have any more information pertaining to Steve Kerr?
There's people who say he might miss even more than that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, apparently the back surgery over a year ago was supposed to alleviate all this pain, but it's come back. You take a look at a guy like Steve Kerr. It seems like he's got everything but his health. Everything else, and it's too bad that he's got apparently nausea and headaches. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not sure exactly how that's related to back pain and what happens and why he's having that. But I'd be you're kind of hopeful that something can happen to make him come back for the end of this the end of the season, and we're in the postseason here, but it doesn't look good that he's kind of out indefinitely right now. They have a guy who's the former Cavs coach, and Mike Brown might be interesting. Another little twist if the Cavs end up playing the Warriors again in the finals.
I'll tell you what, Steve Kerr or no Steve Kerr, they look really good against the Portland Trailblazers with Mike Brown. They look like they're firing on all cylinders. One more thing I want to get to.
And they didn't miss a beat when Luke Walton coached the team.
That's right.
Nothing away from Steve Kerr, but they didn't. And it's easier to fill in for somebody than it is to be the main guy for good, because people rally around a cause and they play hard for you. So I don't take anything away from Steve Kerr, but they did play great for Luke Walton.
And they've looked, I don't even know what the right word is. There were times this year with Kevin Durant and without Kevin Durant that they didn't look as good as last year's team that obviously won 73 games and came 1 game short of winning the NBA Finals last year. So we'll see how this goes, and obviously our prayers go out to Steve Kerr. Hopefully this whole back thing gets situated. One more thing before I let you go, Jason Barr, and that is you have an update on Shelby Miller's injury. It was first diagnosed as forearm tightness for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's pitched a lot better this year than last year. What kind of update do you have for us?
Yeah, no, the Diamondbacks have just placed him on the 10-day disabled list, so he's got elbow inflammation. And Bracho's been called up. Silvino Bracho's been called up from AAA, but it might be Archie Bradley who ends up getting that start. I don't think they've announced yet what's going to happen in 4 days. They don't have to right away. Too bad. He has pitched much better than last year. Still may kind of make some mistakes here and there, but it's a setback. It's a setback for him, and we'll see how long he's out. These things can be a few weeks, or these things can be a lot longer. But it's he's on the 10-day DL for now.
When you're dealing with forearm tightness or elbow inflammation, it is always a pitcher's worst nightmare. KGUN Sports Director Jason Barr, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thanks for filling in, Ross.
Appreciate it. We'll have more on the Diamondbacks when we come back right after this on The Zach Clark Show with yours truly, Boss Ross, on ESPN Tucson, 1490 and 104.9 FM.
This is smooth jazz on the Boston Swampy Show.
I love it, everybody. Dave Brubeck here on the Zach Clark Show on ESPN Tucson, 1490, 104.9 FM. Inside Joke, the Boston Swampy Smooth Jazz Show. That'll be coming at you later. Maybe. Who knows? Dave Brubeck, everybody. Inside Joke. Diamondbacks are the topic of this next segment. Your phone calls, always welcome. 298-1490. 298-1490. These Arizona Diamondbacks, they actually look pretty good right now. They're a game and a half out of first place, 12-8. The Colorado Rockies are 13-6, which I don't know if anybody saw coming, but their pitching has been better. They're getting timely hitting. They've got everybody healthy until today, pretty much. This team, I'm telling you, if they can just avoid the one bad month they seem to have every year where they go 5-17 or 5-20 or whatever it is, if they can avoid that month, especially with everything that's going on with San Francisco and the fact that the Dodgers have not been as consistent as of course we know the Rockies will eventually blow it because that's who they are. This team, regardless of, and of course we'll get into Shelby Miller's injury here in a second and how devastating it could be for him and this ball club, I look up and down this team and I see a lot of positive things. I mean, really. I mean, you've got obviously Paul Goldschmidt, who right now has more walks than strikeouts. You've got a healthy A.J. Pollock. Jake Lamb looks like a superstar. Chris Owings, who I could have told you they should have traded 2 years ago, is playing like a regular everyday, next coming of insert great shortstop who also plays in the outfield. I mean, this team looks for real. Yasmani Tomas, David Peralta, these guys are all hitting. I mean, I don't have the full terms here in front of me, but I got to believe this team's batting in the 280s or the 290s as a team. You look at their pitching stats right here. It's absolutely amazing to me. Zach Greinke, who even though he's only 1-2 right now, and Taijuan Walker, who has really struggled in a few of his starts, they're still getting very constant production. Here's another stat I want to give out here through their first 20 games of this season. You know who's given up the most home runs on this team? Randall Delgado with 4. Their starters have combined to give up, let's see, let me look at this here, 10 home runs in 20 games. That's got to be a victory if you're a Diamondbacks fan, I would think. See, there you go. I'm just saying, look, if you're a Diamondbacks fan, you should be happy. The Giants are in big trouble. The Dodgers, who I think will probably pick it up, will get there. You're in a good position. We'll talk Shelby Miller here in a minute. But we've got our first phone call of the show. Lance wants to talk some D-backs. Lance, welcome to the Zach Clark Show on ESPN Tucson. What's up, man?
Hey, you're not, Zach. What's going on here?
What's going on, Lance? You want to talk some Diamondbacks?
Yeah, if we're going to talk about what's inevitably going to happen with Rockies dropping everything, we got to talk about the Diamondbacks management eventually trading away all their good pieces because that's what they do. That's just their thing. But let's hope that's not going to happen. I think just like all the bats you just named off, they're looking good. Their offense is looking good. There's been a couple games this season, 20 games so far, that they haven't had a good offensive performance, but for the most part, they have been swinging and they've been getting on base and getting runs and been looking great. Now the pitching, that's where it's going to come down to. I'm trusting Greinke and I'm trusting Robbie Ray. I'm undecided on Taijuan Walker. He's hit and miss for me right now. I don't trust Patrick Corbin. I've seen him throw much better in the past than he has last year and this year, and I do not trust Shelby Miller as far as he can throw or I can throw him, which isn't very far. And I know you said you're going to get Shelby Miller. I just think he's holding them back. They got to do something about that. So I'll listen to you on the air.
Thank you, Lance, for the phone call. Appreciate it. And by the way, I've not even mentioned the bullpen yet, which, again, I'll get to them in a second and how fantastic they've been outside of maybe Randall Delgado. But he's right in that the bats are coming alive. Some of the pitching is A little bit wonky. I still agree with that trade, by the way. Trading Segura and getting Taijuan Walker and getting Ketel Marte. I actually still really like that trade because, by the way, Ketel Marte is hitting like 350 at Reno right now.
Now, all of those things are fine. The consistency.
Sure.
The consistency in pitching and hitting. It's not there yet. You had a situation the other night where offensively couldn't do anything, and then bam, all of a sudden you score 9 runs in a single inning.
Oh, I watched that game.
I know.
And that was and you know what it was? That's the best plate discipline I've seen from that ball club all year. And it took 1 inning to realize how good that offense can be if they just have a little bit of plate discipline.
But it's amazing how you can have situations like that, and then, 2 games prior to that, you get like 2 hits in the entire game and don't score any runs. The inconsistency offensively is worrisome because you have these huge outputs in spurts.
And the thing is, and Lance made this comment, and I don't know if I 100% agree with it, I don't think they need to make a ton of trades. In fact, if anything, if they were going down the path that they were going down the last couple years, I mean, Robbie Ray would have probably been on the trade block. Nobody's going to take Greinke's $30 million. Nobody's going to want Tomas's contract. I mean, really, we're talking about somebody like David Peralta getting traded, or of course, if Pollock had a bad season coming off an injury, maybe you move him, even though he's a catalyst of this offense, probably the most important part outside of Goldschmidt. But I mean, okay, let me ask you a real question, and to all you Diamondbacks fans out there, this pitching staff is better than almost any pitching staff they've had in the last 5 years. It is, and I get that the inconsistencies are rare. Honestly, my answer to that is it's baseball. You have 162 games. You're hoping that you win more than you lose, and I realize that you want, everybody to be hitting at a certain mark, 280, 290. You want the bullpen, you want the rotation to have good innings out all the time, but you're not going to get that all the time. It's baseball.
But you have a lot of the same guys that have been here for the last few years. Mm-hmm. They're just pitching-wise, they're just pitching a little bit better this year. Shelby Miller was pitching much better until
he got hurt.
Until he got hurt the other night. Robbie Ray's pitching better. Corbin's pitching better. Bradley, I think, smart move putting him coming out of the bullpen, long relief. I think that is a perfect place for him. I know they still want him to be a starter, but I just think he fits in great there, at least for this year and next year, till he can get some more experience at the major league level. I still think they're an arm or two away. They need to trade and try to pick somebody up, but
and you very well might be right.
What do you have left to trade?
Well, at this rate, probably their most tradable asset that isn't a pitcher, probably David Peralta. Honestly, it's either Peralta or if they can get something for Chris Owings.
Yeah.
By the way, Fernando Rodney has been an awesome fit for them. I had huge doubts about a guy who's 40, who's bounced around to seemingly like half the league. I had my doubts, and he's been awesome. And again, outside of maybe Randall Delgado, who's been a little home run happy, this bullpen has been fantastic. And it's something to look forward to. So you may be right, and they may need to make a move, especially now that Shelby Miller's hurt, which, by the way, he had an MRI. He had forearm tightness. We talked about this with KGUN 9 Sports Director Jason Barr. Forearm tightness. It's now elbow inflammation. That's bad news. He's on the 10-day DL. As somebody that goes through forearm tightness and had an elbow surgery, it sucks. It almost never goes away. The inflammation, no matter how much it drops, you got to baby it. It's like an oblique injury. It's never really fully back, and no matter how great you feel, just one slip, and it's right back to where it was.
Well, I was going to say, how quickly do you think this 10-day becomes a 60-day? Yeah, I mean...
Well, again, the whole thing with 60 days, once you put him on there, he's there.
Yeah, well, and that's my saying. What I'm trying to say is how quickly just that little injury it can be nagging and nagging, and it could be something more serious in there.
Right, which is, again, they did an MRI. I'm sure they're going to do another one, maybe with a die cast this time, to see if there's any more structural damage, or maybe he can rest it, or a lot of these guys are getting platelet-rich injections to help them out with any type of elbow injury, forearm tightness. If I had to guess, I'm going to say he's not going to throw it, like, he's not going to be even ready till maybe June. Because of how, unless this is a fluke thing and it's rest, I'd say June. And you know what? You made the point earlier about Archie Bradley. He's been great in his role. But I'll tell you what, if he comes out and pitches well, and then they can just put him back, and then let's say they make a trade, and they trade Robbie Ray because they can get value for him, or they make that effort to maybe go out and get another arm, they still can use Bradley however they can. I'm not saying that the Diamondbacks need another Josh Colementor because he was so up and down for them, but a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He can start, he can long relief, he can middle relief, and still give you. I mean, the first run he gave up was that home run against the Dodgers in that game where they scored 9 runs in the 8th inning. That's the first run he gave up all year, everybody. So Archie Bradley, who had confidence issues, maybe some psychological issues after getting beaned, he's ready. Well, and so that's...
And I guess that's the biggest question is, taking a line drive on the head like that, I mean, mentally that's got to do something to you.
Oh, yeah.
What does it take to get back out there on that field having sustained an injury like that?
Well, mentally, physically, psychologically, emotionally. I mean, it's like you got to sit in an armchair after getting healed up, right?
And that's why I think that having him out of the bullpen as long relief is perfect for him, because it doesn't put the mental pressure on you of, man, I got to come in here and have a great start. I got to put in 7, 8 innings. He doesn't have that pressure on him. He just comes in, gets through the lineup once, gets through 3 innings, and he's done.
These are all, honestly, good problems to have.
Yeah.
When you're a team that's 12-8, yeah, you've had your ups and downs, you've taken your lumps. Your lineup's there. You've got a superstar player in Paul Goldschmidt. You've got A.J. Pollock, who's healthy. You've got Jake Lamb taking the next step. You've got all these pitching things. I'm not saying it's a luxury, because a lot of times these things are luxuries. But when you have an injury like some staffs, if they took an injury like this, would be decimated. And I know, because there are several teams in the league that have way worse pitching staffs than the Diamondbacks do. So if you're a Diamondbacks fan, I feel good today, except for the fact that Shelby Miller got hurt in one of the... I'm not going into how bad that trade was, getting rid of Dansby Swanson, but you've got him, you're keeping him, you're using him. It sucks that he got hurt, but you've got somebody to get it back to you. Archie Bradley, whoever, he says... Jason Barr said they called up Bracho. Okay, they'll be fine. As long as they don't go 5 and 20 something in a month, they'll be fine. They'll compete. They will. 298-1490. 298-1490. Coming up in our last segment of the first hour, the saga that is Madison Bumgarner. My goodness, we've got some audio, some very ironic audio after this on the Zach Clark Show. With me, Boss Ross, on ESPN Tucson, 1490 and 104.9 FM. It's the Zach Clark Show on ESPN Tucson, 1490, 1049 FM. It's Boss Ross hanging with you. I got my main man, Stacy, running the board for me. Always love you, brother. That being said, again, your phone calls always welcome on this program, 298-1490, 298-1490.
That's the All-Pro Plumbing Studio line.
Thank you, sir. The All-Pro Plumbing Studio line. That's right. With our last segment of this first hour of the show, Madison Bumgarner. My goodness. All right, so for those of you that don't know, he got in a dirt biking accident, sprained his AC joint of his throwing arm, and is supposed to be out for 2 months and could be out longer. And then there was an added element to the story of this following commercial of how Madison Bumgarner takes his, quote, day off.
What Madison Bumgarner does on his day off is anyone's guess. But you can bet it probably involves his Ford F-150 with a game-changing aluminum alloy body. Its body panels won't rust like other trucks, and it really cleans up nicely.
Perfect.
Ford F-150, the official truck of Madison Bumgarner. Get one at your California Ford dealer.
I'm speechless. Like, okay, it's bad enough that he did something stupid, but I mean that whole ad, and I wish I could show you visually, but I had to play it once because there were dirt bike noises in it. That is like the worst timed commercial in like the history of all time.
Is it perfectly timed?
Right, perfect. That's the best line. Look. Regardless of how much he's paid, which I guess he hasn't gotten his big payday yet, there has to be a clause in this to avoid people doing this. Otherwise, the Giants are dumb.
Ryan Finley and I talked about this on Friday, and just the absurdity of it, and the absurdity of some of the stipulations and clauses in contracts, and it's for reasons like this.
Oh yeah. An example I thought of over the weekend, Ben Roethlisberger crashed his motorcycle, almost died. Now, we've learned that Ben Roethlisberger could survive like hurricanes, volcanoes, any natural disaster you can think of. The guy's tough. As a Bengals fan, it upsets me because, well, quite frankly, we play him twice a year. But, look, you gotta be smarter about this. Your arm, your body is valuable to the San Francisco Giants organization. Why are you gonna go risk that dirt biking? Don't
most guys go golfing or something on their off days? You know,
you can tear your oblique golfing.
Or how about this?
Smoke weed every day.
You know,
well, it is California.
Why are you doing something that can ruin your career?
He sprained his AC joint. You know what that means, everybody? It means that joint in his throwing arm is damaged. It's sprained. The muscle tissue in that whole joint area is damaged. Guess what? He's not throwing for 2 months. I don't care how good he feels. That's going to change. That's a big problem. And look, I'm not saying, why would he even agree to do a commercial like that? My goodness. Forget whether he dirt bikes or not. That's just bad optics, everybody. I don't understand how athletes can be so dumb. I get that he's not making $30 million that Kershaw and Greinke are making. I understand that. What I don't understand is how you can be so bereft of thought. I don't get it. Coming up in the next hour of the show, we've got the NHL playoffs, everybody. We've also got some Tiger Woods news. We'll talk a little NFL draft, and 2 major sports franchises are being sold. That's all coming up on the Zach Clark Show on ESPN Tucson, 1490, 1049 FM. We'll be back right here after this.